You had it. You had it, and you talked yourself
Oh,
out of it.
I did.
Welcome back to the Think Like the Test podcast. I am Ben Caldwell. With me again is Carrie Wita.
Hey, everyone.
This episode I'm calling Systems in Two Parts. And I like that because it tells you nothing about what we're actually going to be talking about in terms of test taking strategy. But as we lead into this, what does it mean to you to be an MFT? Like, how is that different from other professions?
Yeah, I mean, what I learned in grad school is that MFTs think systemically. Marriage and family therapists definitely see all the work of therapy is evaluating how the clients, like even if it's an individual client, how the systems may be contributing to supporting the symptoms, preventing the client from achieving whatever goals it is that they're hoping to get out of therapy. It's very obvious when you're working with couples, for example. There is this, kind of question of who is your client in that situation, and for an MFT, the client is the relationship, as opposed to having like two individual clients at the same time. I think that that's what I really like about MFT, the MFT like philosophy, is that even if it is just an individual client, which it often is, you're working with just an individual client, the work can still be systemic.
Since you're on the MFT track, we are going to focus in today on a couple of questions that are, in fact, specific to systemic thought. And just as a reminder for our listeners, Carrie has not seen these questions before. You are coming in cold. You're going to be presented with a sample question. We'll tell you where the question comes from. And then Carrie's going to walk us through her decision-making process as she comes to an answer on that question. Hopefully that informs you when you're thinking about your own test-taking strategy. Carrie, are you ready?
I'm ready.
A couple has been married for 1.5 years and have a newborn baby. They seek therapy to deal with behavioral problems involving the mother's 3 children from a previous marriage. The father angrily says that the children, 9, 12, and 16, mouth back at him and do not respect their mother's authority. The couple has started having serious fights. The therapist decides to focus initially on the times when the father has thought that the children were respecting their mother's authority. The purpose of this focus is to help the what? And this question comes from the 2022 AMFTRB Candidate Handbook for the National MFT Exam. A, parents unite the marital dyad. B, father accept his role as a step-parent. C, parents feel hopeful about the situation. Or D, mother perceive her part in the interaction.
Wow. Uh, so I have a affinity or an inclination toward postmodern, particularly kind of narrative therapy. And so I'm reading this question. I'm thinking, yeah, I love that. Focus on times when the fathers thought that the children were respecting their mother's authority. That's great. You're identifying moments of difference,
Mm-hmm.
sparkling moments, as one might call them in narrative therapy, in order to kind of shift the narrative and kind of thicken the narrative around a preferred way of looking at the situation. Um, but
You don't need to
narrative
prove
therapy,
to me that you are a narrative therapist. I
I
understand that.
I know, but I now I'm reading this and I'm thinking like, oh God, unite the marital dyad and accept the role as step parent. These are very not narrative concepts, but I do vaguely remember them from a family systems class back in grad school. So if the therapist is focusing initially on the times when the father has thought that the children are respecting their mother's authority, the purpose of this focus is to okay, the first one is help the parents unite the marital dyad. Um, I don't. I'm not sure how. Oh gosh, I'm not sure how that does that. Uh, I think that it. I think if I remember correctly, boy, I am reaching back into the cobwebs here. I think uniting the marital dyad might be an intervention for that might be to kind of separate them, maybe have them, like, if I remember correctly, like do a date night or uh, uh, maybe have therapy, just the two of them, to kind of create a boundary between that dyad and the parent-children dyad, or the parent-children kind of relationships. Oof, I don't know. So I'm not sure about that. Sounds very, again, like a previous episode. It sounds very family systemsy. So okay, let's look at B. Father, the purpose of this focus is to help the father accept his role as a step parent. Um, I don't, I don't think that this doesn't sit right for me. I don't see how focusing on times when the father thought the children were respecting their mother's authority, helps father accept his role as a step parent. I would imagine that intervention would look more like having him step in a meaningful way. Uh, Maybe creating rules or delivering some consequences or something, to kind of solidify that role. But I don't see how focusing on when the children have respected their mother's authority, that doesn't seem to fit that for me.
Okay.
Okay, so C is the purpose of this focus is to help the parents feel hopeful about the situation. To me, I'm like, yeah, it's that, because that I think would happen. If the father angrily says the children mouth back at him and do not respect their mother's authority, which is a very black and white statement that they do not respect their mother's authority. That is an indicator that this is always the case. So, of course, if that's the mindset that they're coming into therapy with, then that would make them feel, I think, fairly bleak about the situation. And we all know one of the things that you need to do as a therapist is instill hope in your clients for that change is possible. So, I do think that this focus of times when the father has thought, actually, the children were respecting their mother's authority, I think that would help make them feel hopeful about the situation. I'm not sure if that's the purpose of this intervention, of this focus. I think it's a byproduct for sure. But let's see what D is. The purpose of this focus is to help the mother perceive her part in the interaction. Again, I think it's a very family systems thing, I think. Understanding how she influences the like chain of events. But I'm not sure how focusing on times when specifically the father thought the children were respecting their mother's authority. I don't see how that helps the mother perceive her part in the interaction. So while I'm highly doubtful of my instincts because I'm feeling like they're not very systemic. Like C doesn't have any of the good system words in it. But I feel like I have to pick C. In the test I would pick C and move on. So
Exactly what you should do here. Pick C and move on.
I feel so vindicated.
So you're focusing in your thought process on what is systemic, which all of these are reasonably systemic, and on what the task will help accomplish. So what is the purpose of pointing out times when the father has thought that the children were respecting their mother's authority? One thing that I think is easy to miss in this question is that we are talking about the early stage of therapy, right? The parents have sought therapy to deal with these behavioral problems. They've started having serious fights. The therapist decides to focus initially on times when the father has thought that the children were respecting their mother's authority. Well, if you look at the response options here, they're all decent enough options. And so you can think about, okay, what does this focus actually do? And you're right, it's hard to get to this would help the father accept his role as a step parent. Uniting the marital dyad is a good thing to do, but that seems more like it might be even middle phase of therapy. The first thing you want to do, or at least one of the early things you want to do, is instill hope. And a way that you can get there in any systemic form of therapy is to talk about times when the problem didn't exist or wasn't as bad. And the terminology for this can differ a little bit from one model to another, but instilling hope is systemic, it is early stage, and it seems likely to be a result of pointing out the times when the father thought the children were respecting their mother's authority. C is correct. And I appreciate, Carrie, one particular thing that you said at the end, where you'd kind of thought through it for a minute and you're like, I'm just going to pick C and move on. That is good test taking strategy, because it's really easy, not just on these, on a lot of questions, to talk yourself out of the right answer when you already have it. And so, because these are timed tests, you got to get through them. Once you feel reasonably confident that you've got the right answer, move on. And if you're taking practice tests as part of a prep program through me or through anybody else, you might want to kind of make note of where were the questions that I changed my answers, because it helps you to know as an examinee, did that help me? Or did those changes actually hurt me? Because if the changes actually were more likely to hurt me, then I need to do a better job of sticking with my first instinct on these questions. On the other hand, if changing my answer tended to help me, then my bigger issue taking the real thing is going to be time management, making sure that I have enough time to get through all of the questions at enough of a level of depth that I can make changes where I need to make changes where it's going to be helpful. So the title of this episode was Systems in Two Parts. I actually have a second question for you that is involving the same vignette. So same vignette, the couple that's been married for a year and a half, same stuff leading them into therapy. Which of the following statements should the therapist make to help the family perceive their complaints from a systemic or a systems perspective? I'm going to do that again. Which of the following statements should the therapist make to help the family perceive their complaints from a systems perspective? A, it is difficult to be a stepfather. B, the children are having difficulty adapting to the new baby. C, the marital relationship is being affected by your wife's children. Or D, you are experiencing a normal adjustment to becoming a stepfamily.
Oh no, I was feeling so proud of myself for being a good systems thinker, and now I'm confused again. Okay, uh, I don't think it's A. I don't think it is difficult to be a stepfather. Helps move things, understand their complaints from a systems perspective. It may be great validation, maybe good rapport building, but it has nothing to do with a systems perspective.
Okay.
B, the children are having difficulty adapting to the new baby. I could see how that could be from a systems perspective, because you are kind of pointing out how a change in the system has caused some other problems elsewhere. It's not just a lack of respect. As the question says, the father angrily says that the children 9, 12, and 16 mouth back at him and do not respect their mother's authority. Saying that the children are having difficulty adapting to the new baby kind of reframes that as that behavior is, it's not that they lack respect, it's that their system has been disrupted and they're dealing with that kind of disruption. But I'm not feeling like that's definitely it. See, the marital relationship is being affected by your wife's children. Well, I think it's kind of, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that one had more to do about like the general systems, I'd feel better about it. That feels kind of blamey, placing the blame on the children. Finally, D, you see, I love this one. You are experiencing a normal adjustment to becoming a stepfamily. Um, that sounds very safe and probably maybe I don't know if accurate's the right word, but um, validating, normalizing. It seems normalizing to share that with the family. Uh, my gut is saying that that's more of like a family development perspective. And I'm not that that's not systemic, but if we're talking about specifically systemic therapy, I'm not sure that statement is helping the family, like specifically helping the family perceive their complaints from a systems perspective. I'm going to do the same thing I did in the first one. I'm going to say B. My answer is B. The children are having difficulty adapting to the new baby. And I'm going to move on.
You had it. You had it, and you talked yourself
No,
out of it.
I did. Oh, no. Okay. So the answer is D. You are experiencing a normal adjustment to becoming a step family. Okay. So tell me why that is more systems perspective-y than the children are having difficulty adapting to the new baby.
So only option D speaks to the entire family. Option A speaks to the
Um,
stepfather. Option B, you might be actually saying the words to the family, but it only explains what's happening with the children. Option
yeah.
C, again, you might be saying this to the whole family, but it's only talking about what's happening in that marital subsystem. If you're helping the family, like the entirety of the family, perceive their complaints from a systems perspective, then you need something that is explanatory for the entire family and helps make their experiences normative, understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Only option D here gets you there. And part of the reason why I chose these two questions is that when you're looking at differences between professions and you talk about philosophy, I've heard the complaint more than a few times that the differences are fuzzy, that they are nebulous, that we're all kind of doing the same stuff. And I love our sister professions. I have so much respect for social workers, for counselors, for psychologists. And the reason why I have so much respect comes down to those philosophical differences. We work from different places, and those differences are meaningful. And when we recognize those differences, then we all have something unique to contribute to a treatment conversation. In this instance, we're talking about the MFT exam and the National MFT exam in particular, more so than the California MFT exam. The National MFT exam will emphasize a systemic perspective. And that is not some kind of vague or nebulous thing. It means adhering to some key systemic principles, including holism, the idea that the whole system is more than the sum of its parts, and homeostasis, that systems seek stability. And option D here, I think, really speaks to both of those in ways that the other options either don't speak to or don't speak to as well. So, Carrie, you get 50% on a test of being
Yeah,
a
okay.
systemic therapist, but you
I'll
had
take
it. It was
it.
right. It was in your hand. You
I
had
know.
it.
I know. Oh gosh. So now I'm rethinking my strategy of just pulling the trigger. I talked myself out of one and I stopped trying to talk myself out of one on the other. So whew, I'm just gonna have to do more studying about systems thinking.
Well, but I think that's also a really good example. Like it's for most examinees, it's not that changing an answer is always good or always bad.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I think it's helpful to track is so that you can look at tendencies. Does it usually help me if I change my answer? Does it usually mean I'm talking myself out of a good one? But most people, you included, it's not going to be 100% one or the other, right? It depends a little bit on the question. It depends a little bit on your thought process on that question.
No, that makes all the sense in the world. It really does. And I think that between trying to not talk myself out of the right answer, but giving myself enough time to think through things so I can come up with the right answer while also agonizing over whether this test was just like incorrectly written. This
That
gives
was
me a
the
lot
last
to think
episode.
about. Yeah, I know exactly. Like to combine all of it together,
Hmm.
I will be a completely neurotic test taker. So, but jokes aside, I do see that the wisdom of like, the more I do it, the like take like answer these questions, the more I see kind of what my like own personal tendency is. Is it to overthink? Is it to just jump the gun? And I think that would be really helpful to see over time, because these are just like two questions back to back, but seeing in aggregate, which pattern do I tend to fall into more? I see how that would be super helpful to prepare.
That's why I'm a big believer in the benefit of taking practice exams, like not just knowing the material deeply, but actually taking practice exams in the format of the ones you'll be taking for real. And also pretty deeply reviewing your results on those practice exams. The question rationales can help you understand not just the content, but how test questions tend to parse out that content and the kinds of mistakes that you as an examinee might make. Different people make different kinds of mistakes. But if you understand the kinds of mistakes that you tend to make, then you're better able to target those and be much stronger on test day. If you want to be a stronger examinee, then you can take any of the programs available for BBS exams on bencaldwelllabs.com. Again, bencaldwelllabs.com. On behalf of Carrie Wida, I'm Ben Caldwell. We'll see you next time.